Aloha everyone. So welcome to our third part of our discussion for the estimation of parameters. So for this lecture video, we'll be discussing interval estimate of the population mean with known sample proportion. So let me read this statement. So ADB published on their site that in the Philippines, 21.6% of the population lives that national poverty line in 2015. Okay, and the other one here is according to World Atlas, about 10% of people on Earth are left-handed. So as you can see here, we have here a percentage of referring to a portion of interest. So this is what we call the proportion. Okay, so let me present to you the symbols used in proportion notation. So we have here the capital letter P, that's for population proportion. And we have here P bar, stands that is equal to the sample proportion. And the formula we have for sample proportion is P bar is equal to capital letter X all over N, wherein capital letter X is the number of sample units that possess the characteristics of interest, and our N here is the sample size. Now for P bar, so that is equal to N minus capital letter X over N, or simply 1 minus P bar. Okay, so this is our notation for a proportion. Okay, so please take note of these of these notation of these symbols. All right, let's proceed with this example. So in a recent survey of 180 students, 115 are using laptops as their gadget for online classes. Find P bar and Q bar, where P bar is the proportion of students that are using laptop. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know here is the value of X, okay, the value of the capital letter X, and the value of our N, or the sample size. Kasi yung ating formula in finding the P bar is capital letter X all over N. Okay, so again, yung capital letter X is the number of sample units that possesses the characteristics of interest. Okay, so madali lang naman ma-determine yung X dito, okay? Kasi yung X natin is, of course, less than the sample size. Okay? So, ano ba yung sa dalawang given natin dito? Ano yung alin dito yung pinakamaliit? Okay? So, that is 115. So, therefore, this is our um, our X. And 180 is our sample size. So, therefore, our P bar is 115 divided by the 180. So that would be 0.6388889. So approximately that is 0.64. So that is our um, P bar. Okay, so our P bar is approximately 0.64. Okay. All right, so don't forget the X that we're talking here is just the portion of interest coming from the sample. So, that's why kung mapapansin natin, always mataas yung ating sample size kesa sa ating X. So, 150 all over 80, 180 is approximately 0.64. So, madali na natin makukuha yung Q bar kasi the formula we just have for Q bar is 1 minus P bar. So, we have here 1 minus P bar, so that would be 1 minus 0.64, so that is equal to 0.36. Okay, so conclusion, the proportion of students that are using laptop is 0.64 or 64%. So as easy as that. So that's how you find the P bar and Q bar. Okay, so let's proceed with the formula for confidence interval of the population proportion. Now, for population proportion, okay, so baka ma-confuse kayo, Kasi yung sample size din natin for population proportion is greater than 30 din. Okay, so baka ma-confuse kayo, ano na ang gagamitan ko dito? Is it the Z distribution or the population proportion? So typically, for population proportion, increasingly large yung ating sample size. Like, uh, 500 yung sample size and the likes. Okay? But nasa problem naman if population proportion nga yung ating gagamitin na confidence interval formula. Okay? So we have here the formula P bar. Okay? So kanina alam na natin yung process or process ng paghanap ng P bar minus Z alpha over 2, okay, times the square root of P bar. So you can just replace this 1 minus P by Q bar. Okay? So you can just use here Q bar instead of 1 minus P bar. Pwede din. It's the same lang naman. So you can just here use Q bar times Q bar all over N. This is for the lower limit. And for the upper limit, we have P bar plus Z alpha over 2 times P bar times 1 minus P bar, Q bar over N. Again, the formula we have for the proportion estimate is X all over N. Okay? So X is the number of respondents favor a given situation, and our sample size is N. The Z alpha over 2, that is the correction factor for normal distribution. So, the same lang sa Z distribution. Okay? Meron tayong apat na most likely use confidence level and its corresponding Z values. So, yun yung gagamitin natin na Z alpha over 2. And then yung E natin, yung formula for the margin of error is this. Z alpha over 2 times P bar times Q bar all over N. So this is our formula for the margin of error. Again, let me repeat. So for the proportion estimate, so that is X all over N, wherein X is the number of respondents for favoring a given situation and our N is sample size. Z alpha over 2, so the same with the Z distribution, we have the 4 most likely used confidence level and its corresponding Z values. So we will have the 90%, the 95, the 98, and the 99%. And for the margin of error, this is the formula. Okay? All right, note, this is very important. Okay, the rounding rule for the confidence interval of the population proportion. The rounding rule, round off to 3 decimal places. Okay, take note natin. Okay, round off to 3 decimal places for the population proportion. The final answer should be rounded off to 3 decimal places or nearest thousands. Okay? Kapag hindi natin yung nagawa, of course, yung sagot nyo, kahit tama naman yung solution nyo, hindi nyo in-apply yung rounding rule, of course, that's still incorrect. So since we have the rounding rule, we need to follow it. Okay? Alright, so again, ito yung Z alpha over 2, again, na ginagamit natin, most likely use confidence level. For 90%, we have 1.645. For 95%, we have 1.96. For 98, we have 2.33. And for 99, we have 2.575. So last time, I already show you paano to kinuha. You can have the 94% as well. And please review nyo na lang yung lecture video natin for Z distribution kung paano yun nakuha ang Z alpha over 2 for 94%. Okay, so pwedeng lumabas din yun sa exam nyo. Actually, nilagay ko na din siya sa problem set nyo. So, if hindi natin or nalimutan natin, you can rewatch the lecture video for the Z distribution. Okay. Example number 14. So let's have this example. Compute the margin of error of the 98% confidence interval estimate of P when P bar is 0.2 and N is 36. Now for the P bar, so for the margin of error rather, since population proportion yung problem natin, So, gagamitin natin yung formula na Z alpha over 2 times square root of P bar times Q bar over N. Okay, so yun yung gagamitin natin. So, mayroon tayong apat na given na kailangan hanapin. Una yung P bar. So, meron na tayo check. Pangalawa is Q bar. Wala pa tayo, pero alam natin kung paano yun hanapin. Meron na tayong sample size, 36. At yung last ay yung Z alpha over 2. Okay, so yung Q bar natin, madali na lang kasi yung formula natin is for Q bar, that is 1 minus P bar. So P bar natin is 0.2, so that would be 1 minus 0.2, that is equivalent to 0.8. Okay? So that is our Q bar. Next, what is the next given na kailangan natin? Yung Z alpha over 2. So, since 98% siya, so alam natin, memorize na natin yon. Sabi ko sa inyo, i-memorize natin. So, we have here 2.33. Okay? 2.32 yung Z value natin for the 98% confidence level. So, substitute lang natin sa ating formula. Okay? So, ito na yung formula natin. Erase ko lang. Okay, so we have here P bar is 0.2, Q bar is 0.8, 98% level of confidence. Therefore, that's 2.33. Thus, the margin of error is 2.33 times times 0.2 times 0.8 over 36. So, it will give you 2.33 times square root of 0.2 times 0.8 over 36. Okay, so we will have here a 0.155333333. Okay, so for the margin of error, still we need to round it off to the nearest hundreds. Hindi pa natin dito i-apply yung rounding rule. Okay, depende to yun sa instruction na ibibigay sa inyo ng subject teacher nyo. Okay? So, in our class, lagi yung margin of error the same as for the standard error, ni-round off na, pinapa-round off ko siya sa nearest hundreds para uniform kami. Okay? So, for the margin of error, again, it's approximately 0.16. That's how you find the margin of error for the proportion, population proportion. Alright, so therefore, at 98% confidence level, the margin of error is approximately 0.16. Okay, so let's proceed. Example number 15. A television network surveyed a random sample of 250 families with a certain location in the city of Manila. It was found out that 215 subscribed to the television network that showed Philippine Basketball Association tournament during the final season. Find a 99% confidence interval for the actual proportion of the families that subscribe to the television network that showed PBA tournament during the final season in the whole city of Manila. As you can see here, there's a keyword. Okay, you need to find the 99% confidence interval for the actual proportion. Okay? So, meron naman keyword doon sa question. So, therefore, ang gagamitin natin dito is the confidence formula for the confidence interval for population proportion. Now, ano yung kailangan natin doon sa formula na yun? Again, P bar, Q bar, sample size, at yung Z alpha over 2. So, yung apat na yun yung kailangan natin. So, dito, hindi given yung Q bar, so isosolve pa natin. So, the formula we have for P bar, again, is X over N. Okay? So, dito, we have, according here, a television network surveyed a random sample of 250. So, sample natin is 250. 250 yung ating sample. And then, doon sa sample na yon, they found out, yung portion of interest, they found out that 215 subscribed to the television network. So, that would be our X. So, 215 divided by 250. So that's 0.86. Okay, 0.86 yung ating P-bar. Next, Q-bar natin. Madali na lang ito hanapin kasi yung formula natin, okay, dito tayo. Q-bar natin is 1 minus P-bar. So, 0.86 yung P-bar natin. So, Q-bar is equal to 1 minus 0.86. That is equivalent to, okay, so using our calculator, 1 minus 0.86. So, that would be 0.14. Okay, so our P-bar is 0.14. So, check na tayo sa ating P-bar, Q-bar, meron na tayo, N natin is 250. Next is the Z alpha over 2. So, dito, sabi, 99% confidence level. So, ano yung 99%? Okay, so the Z alpha over 2 for 99% is 2.575. So, lahat na meron tayo. So, substitute na lang natin doon sa ating formula. Alright, so eto na ngayon. For P-bar, we have 0.86. For our Q-bar, we have 0.14. For the Z alpha over 2, that's 2.575. And our N is 250. Okay. Substitute na natin dito sa ating formula. So we'll have here 0.86 minus 2.575 times square root of 0.86 times 0.14 over 250 for our lower limit. So you will have here the following. Now for the upper limit naman, addition lang. Okay, so ito yung lalabas sa calculator nyo. Okay, but again, okay, this is not yet the final answer. We still need to apply our rounding rule. So anong sabi ng rounding rule? You need to round it off to the nearest thousands or 3 decimal places. So for the lower limit, we have 803 since we need to round it off to the nearest thousands. And for the upper limit, we have 917. So that is our final answer for this example. Therefore, one can say with 99% confidence that the percentage of all the families that subscribed to the television network that showed PBA tournament during the final season in the whole city of Manila is in between 80.3% and 91.7%. Again, class, if you have questions or clarifications, don't hesitate to write it on your notebook and ask it on your subject teacher. Next. All right, so a survey found out that 200 workers, 168 said they were interrupted 3 or more 4 times an hour by phone messages, email, etc. As actually, this is actually in real life. Find the 90% confidence interval of the population proportion of workers who are interrupted 3 or more 4 times an hour. So, kailangan ulit natin dito yung P-bar, yung Q-bar, yung N, at yung Z alpha over 2. Okay. So, for the P-bar again, so that is X over N. So, what is our N here? A survey found out that 200 workers, 168 said they were interrupted 3 or more times an hour by phone messages, email, etc. So our sample size here is 200. Okay, so from the 200 workers, ilan yung kinuha? Okay, for sample units, we have 168. So 168 divided by 200. So using your calculator, 168 divided by 200. So that's 0.84. So 0.84 is our P-bar. Now, next is Q-bar natin is 1 minus P-bar. So that would be 1 minus 0.84. That is equivalent to 1 minus 0.84, so that is 0.16. Okay, so we have here 0.16 for the Q bar, N is 200, Z alpha over 2 for 90% confidence level. Okay, so that's 1.645. Okay. So lahat na tayo meron. So let's proceed with the solution. Okay, so wala yung solution natin dito. Okay, so yung solution natin dito, substitute lang na natin sa ating formula. So yung formula natin, we have P minus P bar minus Z alpha over 2 square root of P bar times Q bar over N. Okay. So since it's still estimation, so P bar plus Z alpha over 2 times P bar times Q bar over N. Okay, so ito yung formula natin. So substitute lang natin. So 0.84 minus 1.645 times square root of 0.84 times 0.16 all over 200. Okay? That's for the lower limit. And for the upper limit, we have 0.84 plus 1.645 times square root of 0.84 times 0.16 all over 200. Okay? So, yun yung ating solution. So, using your calculator, type lang natin 0.84, so hindi naman siya masyadong, hindi naman kayo magmamano-mano, mayroon kayo calculator, so hindi na kayo mahirapan. So 0.84 minus 1.645 times square root of, okay, square root of 0.84 times 0.16, okay, over 200. Okay, so that will give you 0.79735676262. So applying the rounding rule, so that would give you 0.797. Okay? Now, for the upper limit, so palitan lang natin agad yung back lang ng yung subtraction ng addition. So that will give you 0.8826432.738. So applying the rounding rule, round it off to the nearest hundreds. So that will give you 0.883. You can double check that on your end. Okay? All right. So let's proceed with the sample size. Okay, for the sample size, all right. So actually, meron tayo ditong tanong, 'di ba? Yung mga survey administrators. So how large is the sample size is needed for us to know that our research is accurate. Okay. So actually, that question is quite difficult to answer because the sample size actually depends on three things. The first is the maximum error of estimate. The second is the population standard deviation. And the third is the degree of confidence. Okay? So again, the sample size depends on these three things. On these three things. Alright. Now, paano natin makukuha yung, or masasolve yung sample size. So actually, nag-derive siya dito sa formula natin for the margin of error. Okay? So ito yung formula natin for the margin of error. So, performing some algebraic manipulation. So, ito na yung naging formula natin for the sample size. So, that would be the quantity Z alpha over 2 times sigma over E squared. Okay, don't forget the squared, ha? Okay, so this is our formula and this is the rounding rule. Okay, so for the sample size, N is equal to the Z alpha over 2, again, we have the four most likely used confidence level and its corresponding Z values times the population standard deviation over the margin of error squared. Now, ito yung rounding rule natin. If necessary, round the answer up to obtain a whole number. That is, if there is any fraction or decimal portion in the answer, use the next whole number for the sample size n. Like for example, yung nag-compute kayo, okay, ang nakuha natin ay 55.9. Okay, so of course, our final answer for that, applying the rounding rule, is 56. However, for example, nakuha nyo ay 55.4. Okay? So for normal or typical na pag-round, typical na pag-round off, okay, magiging sagot natin doon ay 55. However, since there is a decimal portion in the answer, applying the rounding rule we have for the sample size, we still need to round up. So therefore, for 55.4 na final answer, nakuha yung result, ang final answer natin doon ay 56 pa din. Kahit yan 55.01, okay, since there is a decimal portion on the answer, then you need to round up. In the answer, you need to round up. Kahit pa yan 55.000001, still you need to round up since there is a decimal portion in the answer. So I hope clear tayo doon sa rounding rule for the sample size. Okay, so let's have this example. So the ASCO president asked the statistics teacher to estimate the average age of the grade 11 students at their school. How large a sample is necessary? So again, we're tasked to find the sample size. The statistics teacher would like to be 99% confident that the estimate should be accurate within 1 year. From the previous study, the standard deviation of the ages is known to be 4 years. So ano yung kailangan natin na given sa paghanap ng sample size? So yun yung kailangan natin isipin. So the first is the the population standard deviation. So we have here the known standard deviation that is 4 years. Okay, so alam natin dito is 4 years daw. 4 years yung ating population standard deviation. So that would be 4. Next is the Z alpha over 2. So dito, sa given natin, it's 99% confidence level. So that the Z alpha over 2 for that is 2.575. Now, the margin of error, okay, so ano pa bang natitirang numerical value dito? So actually, for the margin of error, meron kayo dyan makikitang keyword na accurate, okay, or the maximum error. So, yun yung magiging keyword natin para malaman natin that's intended for the margin of error. So, we have here 1 year. Okay, so that means that the margin of error is 1. Okay, so we already have all the given. So again, okay, so again, let me change it. It's 2.575. Okay, so this is our formula for the sample size. So N is equal to Z alpha over 2 times sigma all over E squared. So substitute lang natin 2.575 times 4 all over 1 squared. So that would be, you will have your 106.09. So, sir, bakit 107? Again, since there's a decimal portion in the final answer, you need to round up. So, therefore, our final answer is 107. So, the sample size should be 107 to be 99% confident that the estimate will be accurate within 1 year. Okay, so let's have another example for last example for this lecture video. So an insurance company is trying to estimate the average number of sick days that the full-time food service workers use per year. A pilot study found that the standard deviation to be 3.5 days. So known yung ating standard deviation, that is 3.5. How large a sample must be selected if the company wants to be 90% confident of getting an interval that contains the true mean with a maximum error of 1 day? Okay, so our given, okay, so we have standard deviation or the sigma is 3.5. Our z alpha over 2, since it is 90%, so that is 1.645. And the margin of error, since meron tayo ditong sinabi naman sa problem that the maximum error is 1 day. So that would be 1. So substitute lang natin again sa ating formula. So madali lang natin itong makukuha. So ito yung formula again. Z alpha over 2, so that's 1.645 times sigma, that's 3.5 over 1. Yung E natin or the margin of error is 1 squared. Ha? Don't forget the squared. Okay, so substitute natin yung mga value doon sa ating formula. So you will have here 33.14880.625. Since again there is a decimal portion in the final answer, you need to round up to the next whole number. So that would be 34. So therefore, the sample size should be 34 to be 90% confident that the interval that contains the true mean has a maximum error of 1 day. All right. So thank you very much for listening to our to my discussion. So that would be for the estimation of parameters. Again, thank you very much for listening.